it's not really the shit hit the fan scenario specifically that we need to be most not necessarily worried about, but most focused on exactly when and what's going to happen. It's more about when the other people think it's happening or realize it's happening. How you doing, guys? This is Eric from RuleTheWasteland.com. I wanted to make this quick video because I'd been watching some other, I should have checked before making this, whatever, some other prepping video, and I honestly don't remember right off the top of my head what channel it was or exactly what the topic was. So really I remember nothing other than it jogged my mind into thinking about this specific idea, which is that as preppers, if you're decently well prepared, if there was, say, some sort of shit to fan scenario that only affected you, like the power was out for just you somehow, like, you get the little storm cloud, like Eeyore only above your head, things you probably wouldn't be all that bad. We have a decent amount of food, we have a decent amount of toiletries, might even have some medicine, hopefully have some way to generate alternate power or an alternate way to do things without power, like a sun oven or a propane grills and things like that. But it's actually the widespread nature of it that makes it more dangerous. It's the other people being in the same situation that really makes these things really, really dangerous. And that means that it's not really the shit hit the fan scenario specifically that we need to be most not necessarily worried about, but most focused on exactly when and what's going to happen. It's more about when the other people think it's happening or realize it's happening, and it could be either or. I think if you remember back when we were talking about COVID early on in the prepper trifectas, we, based on the information that was out there, it was certainly possible that this could be what I would consider a legit pandemic. But even still, it's something like a 5% fatality rate, which would be very serious and much, much more serious than it actually is. I still wasn't worried about myself, especially in my age and health demographic and whatnot, and all the preparations that I've made to be able to deal with it. I wasn't really worried about the disease ever. I was worried about, and I have tweets and comments on the videos that you can see from back then. I said, sure, I'm not worried about the disease, but what does the country look like if hundreds of thousands of people have died from this? And unfortunately, we got to see what that looks like, even though how many people have actually died from it is debatable. The data is obviously trash. They've revised it many times, always down, and said that the tests could potentially have been wrong, false positives and whatnot. But we had supply shortages, we had massive shutdowns, economic destruction, blah, blah, blah. Everything that's been going on for the past few years all over the world just due to the normies thinking that the shit had hit the fan. So that's something that we need to watch out for just as much as an actual shit the fan moment, because it creates it, and it's probably harder to predict, but the results are actually more dire. And like I said, that can become about as a result of them realizing it happens, which usually would happen after a shit hit the fan event. We'll have, like, if there's a real shit hit the fan, we'll have a grace period probably before all the normies realize just how serious everything is. And we've talked about that before on the live streams too, about what you could do last minute in the event of something major, like let's say an EMP or widespread grid down. Most people are just going to sit around and be like, I don't know. And for maybe a day or two, maybe more. I mean, I know it's a movie, but in that movie Survival Family, the Japanese one that I've reviewed on this channel, which I actually think is pretty good survival movie, that happens. There's like a massive EMP, and everyone's like, they're still trying to go to work and stuff, and being like, well, it's all shut down. What do I do? So you'd have definitely hours, maybe even a few days, depending on what area you live in. If you live in an inner city, it might get pretty ugly pretty quick. Not because people realize it is shit the fan, but just because they're taking advantage of, a grid down situation. But like I was saying early on, it's not necessarily the lack of power that's devastating to us preppers. We've taken precautions for most things that would be a problem as a result of that, but it's everyone else realizing that that's happening and what they do at that point. So figuring out when people are going to realize the shit has hit the fan, or when they're going to incorrectly think that the shit has hit the fan, is just as important as knowing when it actually has, because like we've seen, like I mentioned with COVID, we've seen the toilet paper shortages. There was no actual issue at that moment with toilet paper, with even supply chain disruptions or anything at that particular moment. It's just for whatever reason that got in the public zeitgeist of that being the thing that's going to be hard to get, blah, blah, blah. And then now the normies are like, oh, I need toilet paper, and then it's all gone. And now there is a shit hit the fan, a minor shit the fan scenario that has come about as a result of this. And that could happen with any number of things, from economic disturbances to increased tensions and wartime incidents as a result of what's going on in Ukraine and other places. And there's just all sorts of things like that that could happen as a result of people thinking the shit hits the fan. So pay special attention to what the sentiment is among normal people too, not just fellow preppers, not just fellow people who are aware. But, and that's why it's good to have some way of checking in occasionally on what is the mainstream media's kind of fear du jour or cause du jour or whatever that they want to be talking about, whether that's Ukraine and they go to inflation, that's not a problem anymore. Now they're monkeypox or whatever. So like monkeypox is a good example because there's no evidence that this is going to be a major problem. In fact, there's plenty of evidence that it's not going to be a major problem for the same reasons that like Ebola wasn't, that it has an R0 of less than 0, most of the strains. Much more difficult to spread than something like an influenza or a COVID type virus or respiratory virus. And most of the strains have a much lower fatality rate than the ones that they're spreading around. So it's probably not going to be a big deal, but they're acting like it's a big deal. So lots of things could happen that make people react just as seriously as if it was a big deal. And that's what we need to be prepared for just as much. And it's a little harder to predict, a little harder to keep an eye out for, which makes it even more important. So let me know what you guys think about that. If there's any examples of that in the past that you can think of, put them in the comments. And let me know a few of the things that you think could cause this in the future. There's definitely almost limitless number of things that could cause that. And it's never going to be good when that kind of mob mentality takes over, and that in and of itself is a shit the fan scenario. So, sorry for rambling. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will talk to you soon.